Welcome to the Warships Podcast. We're your host, Kelorn
and KamiSamurai.
This is our first episode of our new podcast. We welcome everyone that's listening. We're going to start out with a few introductions and talk about ourselves a little bit, and then go into what our formal structure is for episodes going forward, as we plan on talking about current events, tactics, and having a guest. So, Kami, how did you get into World of Warships, and where do you see yourself now?
I actually started World of Warships by playing World of Tanks. I was playing World of Tanks, and I went to the website, and they had this little banner on the top that said, "Come join us, play World of Warships. Closed beta begins soon." So I applied to closed beta, and actually got lucky, and I didn't have to buy my way into closed beta. I got an email that allowed me to get into closed beta. I've been playing ever since the first day of closed beta. I wish I would have played during alpha if I would have known, but I love World of Warships. I've made it my job with my stream. This game to me is what a game needs to be. Yes, there are issues with the game still, but it's only a year and a half old, so there will be a lot of things in the near future and in the distant future that are going to make this game better, as long as there are no submarines.
Submarines would seem to be pretty game-breaking, I would agree.
Yes, submarines would be... I know there have been other games in the past that have had submarines. I think it was called Navy Field or something of that nature.
Yes.
And I think people think that submarines would be a great addition, but I don't think they realize how submarines work. They're not like submarines of nowadays. Submarines back then, would surface, use their guns. It had a whole new option to the game, but it would add a whole new it would make people who are already mad about certain things imagine what submarines would do.
Well, the other thing that you have to keep in mind is submarines of the World War II era were really slow. Even on the surface, they were only doing 13, 14 knots with their diesel engines, and when they were submerged, the best speed they could manage to submerge was like 8 knots. So that kind of gameplay in the setting where you have, even a lot of the battleships are doing 28, 30 knots, particularly at the higher tiers, that would be very difficult to balance.
Yeah, you think U.S. battleships are slow? Imagine going 8 knots. Just think about going 8 knots. People complain about how slow the New Mexico and the Colorado and, the mid-tier U.S. BBs are. 8 knots. That's literally starting up and just barely moving. It's like quarter speed on the Iowa or whatever.
Even less.
You're not moving at all. And then you want to try to get across the map. Hey. Yeah,
submarines were ambush hunters in this area. They would get into an area where they knew ships had to come through, and I could see that they would. I have a feeling that if they were in the game, they would evolve into kind of defensive weapons. But we've gotten a little far off topic. So real quick, what's your favorite ship type to play? And if you have a favorite ship, what is it?
My favorite ship type to play is battleship, and my favorite battleship in the game is actually the Iowa. But I play the Fuso the most because I find the tier 6 area kind of the most engaging. You seem to get more brawls. You get more, you get more people moving around at mid tier than you do at high tier.
Less sniping.
Less sniping, more brawling. I find when the game's interactive, I think it gets everybody going. Especially if you're playing in a division or you're playing against some people you know. You tend to want to be engaged with the enemy, not sitting at 20 kilometers and luck chucking shells and hoping you can hit somebody. What is your favorite ship?
My favorite ship. That's a really tough question because I would honestly probably have to say the Turbots because I really, like you say, you like the tier 6 area, which I also very much enjoy, and we've played a lot of tier 6 games together. I really like the tier 8 area, especially when that's the top tier of the game, because I feel like that particular game meta is really engaging. You get a lot of good ships. You get a lot of good gameplay because by the time people are getting to Tier 8, they have learned a little bit about how to play the game. At Tier 6, I find it's a lot of fun because I can go in there and I can just kill people that don't know what they're doing. And whereas at Tier 8, I think I have to be a better player. If that makes sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You know, we know people that play at all tiers of the game, and I feel that the biggest thing you can do with this game is just get better while you're moving up the tiers. Tier 8 used to be my favorite tier, and then it was getting up tiered a lot, so I moved to 6s, and I mean 6s still get up tiered, but I mean hey, sometimes you're the bottom tier, sometimes you get lucky and you get to be the top tier. Either way, you should do your best and hopefully you win the game.
I agree. So a little bit about me. I'm Kelorn. Like Kami, I was playing World of Tanks, and I heard a rumor going around that Wargaming was looking into creating a game that at the time was called World of Battleships. And I've always been a Navy history nut, and I love battleships since the first time my parents took me to see the USS Alabama in Mobile Bay. And since then, I've always been just absolutely nuts about battleships. I applied to be in the alpha. I was not selected, but I was lucky enough to get selected to be in the closed beta, including the closed beta weekends. Did you play in any of the closed beta weekends?
I did not.
So the first closed beta weekend, they only had the Japanese and the Americans in. The Japanese had cruisers, destroyers, and battleships, and the Americans had aircraft carriers, cruisers, and destroyers. And you couldn't get past tier 5. They had artificially inflated the XP that you needed to get like the Fuso to just an enormous amount that there was no possible way that you could get. It was like 500 or 600,000 experience or something ridiculous. So you could get to the Congo, and I just burned my way straight to the Congo and started, and that was the one I was like, oh my god, that one actually looks like a battleship. Because the Kawachi and the Miyogi were kind of meh at the time. But you played that Congo and you get into like the first Islands of Ice map and you could like shoot across the map at people. It was just... it was at that point that I really knew that this was the game that I had been waiting for and they had done it right, if you know what I mean.
I agree. You know, naval history, especially World War II naval history, has always been my strong point. I studied it since I was 8 years old. I have a library full of books on it. I think it's fascinating, not because of, you know, the death and destruction, but more of just the tactics, the type of ships that were used, the designs that, you know, we went from, you know, just from World War I to World War II, just the advancement in technology, you know, going from the Dreadnought to the Iowa. I mean, there's so
and
many,
the Yamato.
And the Yamato, yeah. I mean, there's so many changes and advancements that have happened, and it's so interesting and fascinating to read about. I could sit down every day and just read a book about, you know, individual ships, ship classes, you know, battles, just anything like that. I mean, it's fascinating to me. It's just it's a time period that I feel like I was born in the wrong time period, I guess, is kind of the...
Yeah, I sometimes know what you mean. You go and you look at these battleships and you read about all the things that happened on them, and it's just, to me, it's just so fascinating. And it was kind of like the end of an era. You know, once World War II is over, all of the big gun ships just were slowly scrapped. And you went into the era of the aircraft carrier, which we still are into today.
Yeah, I've been to the Missouri a couple times, and it's still just an awe-inspiring ship. I mean, there's something about when you're standing next to it and you look at it and you're like, man, I would be, if I was an enemy, I would be scared of that ship. You know,
I was actually lucky enough to go see the USS Texas here in Houston because I live in Austin. So I went to visit some friends and we went to see the USS Texas. And it was really interesting to me to compare the Texas and the Alabama, because even the advance between that battleship, which had been upgraded a lot during World War II and between World War I and World War II, compared to the South Dakota class Alabama, which was really built as a World War II true battleship. And it was the Texas feels like the older brother, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you were to put the Texas in the South Dakota and then the Iowa next to each other, I mean, you could see the differences in each ship. Even though the South Dakota and the Iowa, are only a few years apart, you can still see the size difference, the advancements between each ship. And it's a fascinating thing to see that human beings have made these things and what they were designed for. I mean, they weren't designed to carry supplies. They were designed to win a war. And hey,
I agree, and I think that they've been faithfully represented in the game. We can complain all we want that everything's not exactly historically accurate, but at the same time, the models that they put together in the game are gorgeous and true to the ships that they were. But at the same time, I feel like they play the way that they should. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. I mean, everybody complains about RNG when it comes to battleships. But if you think about it, a battleship shooting at 20 kilometers, how accurate do you really think that battleship is going to be? I mean, it's not going to hit 8 out of 9 shells or, however many shells you're firing. It's not going to. You're going to be lucky to hit 1.
I completely agree. Here's an interesting question for you. Do you feel that cruisers are too accurate? Because we get into this complaint that battleships have too much RNG, and to a degree, I agree that they do. But I also feel like I've learned how to deal with that RNG and use it to my advantage. But at the same time, I also feel like cruisers, it's really easy to hit something in a cruiser. They're really, really accurate. Do you think they're too accurate?
They might be a little too accurate because, I mean, the perfect example, and I give this to everyone, is the Zao. The Zao, when you're hitting 11 of 12 shells at 15, 16, 17 kilometers, max range 18 something, I mean, it's a little out of hand. But if they weren't as accurate as they are, you would have a less of a chance of actually being able to compete with a battleship or hitting a destroyer. So I think there's a fair balance going on there between how accurate they are and the amount of damage they can do. But there are some cruisers I feel that are more accurate than other cruisers. Example, the Karlsruhe, not accurate at all.
Well, a lot of the low tier ones are not accurate. I was actually playing the Bogatyr today, and that's a fun little ship. It's we all give in the closed beta we would always talk about the Americans strapped on as many guns on the St. Louis as they could. The Bogatyr, man, like the Russians took that to a whole nother level.
Yeah, you even get dual turrets on the Bogatyr. I mean, that's just the Bogatyr. The cruisers in this game, it's cool to see the evolution as well. I mean, when you think about the Novik and the Bogatyr, and then you get to, even the Chapayev, I mean, you can just see the advancement in how, the tier structure has worked. I really love the game. There are a few things that I say could be fixed, but
one of the things that I really like about this game is, and you said you played World of Tanks as well, is I really like that while there are tiers and they have serious power steps between them, you can compete if you're 2 tiers down in World of Warships. I really never felt like that. If I was bottom tier in a World of Tanks game, I felt useless.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of World of Tanks, imagine you're in the KV-1 and that other guy's in the IS. I mean, you're in trouble. But in this game, if you're in a Fuso, a tier 6, and you're going against tier 8s, I feel in the Fuso, maybe it's just me, but I feel I'm okay. I mean, yes, the Fuso will take pin damage from a North Carolina, and it's going to hurt. But I also feel like I can damage them as well.
Well, you saw ATSF's video where he brought you used the division system to bring a Fuso into tier 10 and did like 150 or 200,000 damage with it. I mean, it competed at tier 10. That's crazy.
Yeah, I feel like, yes, there are ships that struggle when they get tiered up, but there are ships that can hold their own. Not necessarily reliant on to win the game, but you can hold your own in this game, unlike World of Tanks, where if you're bottom tier in World of Tanks, you're kind of cannon fodder. I mean, you have, way less HP. Your gun never pins, things like that. But on World of Warships, I mean, if a North Carolina goes broadside to a Fuso, the Fuso RNG is good, you're going to hurt that North Carolina.
I completely agree. So why don't we move on a little bit and talk about some current events. So 0.5.8 dropped last week in the Bastion mode, which I've actually gotten a chance to play 2 or 3 games on the Bastion map Atlantic. Have you gotten to play a couple of Bastion games, or what were your thoughts?
I have played Bastion mode 4 times since it's dropped, and I can tell you that is my least favorite mode in the game. I find that people do not know how to play it correctly. When your team spawns in and everybody starts shooting the fort that's neutral, you already know that it's going to be a struggle to not win the game, but just play this game, because you realize there wasn't enough explanation, I think, on how to play the mode, because you can tell people don't know how to play it.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't that true of just about any mode that they could come up with? I mean, I've even today, you see people that don't understand the modes that we have: standard, battle, and domination. You'll watch people that are like 2 ticks away from winning the game in a standard battle and have no concept, and they just drive right out of the cap. How much of that do you think will improve as people get more used to playing the Bastion mode?
I think it'll improve if Bastion mode gets put on more than just one map. I think the rarity of seeing Bastion mode, I mean, I've probably played since the patch dropped, I'd say 100 games, and I've seen it 4 times. I think the problem is it's not seen enough. So people, once it pops up, everybody's like, what do we do? I mean, I've only played it 4 times. It's still a learning experience for me. It took me 3 games just to figure out that going to the 1, or I believe the A cap, is not where you need to go in that mode. You need to actually, it sounds funny, but you actually need to get control of the middle of the map with your forces and control the middle of the map. And I know a lot of people don't want to do that because it puts you out in the open, but that mode has to make you change a little bit on how you see the game because of what you have to do, getting control of these bases and getting these forts. I don't know. I think it's going to evolve, and I think people will learn to understand it, but right now it's a struggle because you don't see it very often.
I completely agree that I think that it's going to evolve. I've played some really compelling games on that particular map. One of the interesting things is that we had damaged a ship really, really badly, and it ran away. It was a destroyer, and it went to cap one of our cap zones, and it got too close to the fort by itself and got destroyed by the fort when literally our entire team was on the other side of the map. I thought that was kind of cool because it gave us a way to take care of that guy without having to chase him down in ships that were slower that we were never going to catch him in. So I think that it could be really interesting, and I think that makes capping in particular more interesting because you can't just run in there with a cap when you have no hit points. You can't just sit in one spot. You actually have to dodge the shells that are coming at you from the fort while you're capping.
Yeah, and the fort tends to be pretty accurate. I mean, I watched the Yamato go into B and just get shredded by the team and the fort, and you can see that the fort has a good reload time, does good damage, And I mean, once the fort is capped, if the surveillance station's up, it is hard to get in there because I believe I'm not entirely sure about the specifics of the surveillance station. I don't know if it spots.
I feel like it spots about 10 kilometers. That's just my personal experience, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen any data on what that is.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything either. If the one question I have about it is, does it spot DDs in smoke?
Yes, it does. It's like a radar.
Yeah, so once a team gets control of that circle, it's really tough for the other team because you can't sneak a DD in there unless you kill the surveillance station.
No, you actually have to send like a light tasker group in there with like a battleship and a cruiser or something so that you can withstand the hits.
Yeah, and I think people, don't understand that yet, that a DD just can't sneak in there because I've seen plenty of DDs try to get on there and just get wrecked and have to leave or get killed.
Yeah, or get killed. One of the things I was a little worried about, and I did, because the first time I played, I was in a battleship and I started tossing AP at the forts, and you do full AP damage. Like on the Yamato, you do 14,800 per shot that you hit the fort with. I was a little worried about Bastion mode being a damage farm and kind of skewing the stats of some of those ships. What have you? The next time I was going to play Bastion, I was going to check and see if those damages got added to my damage total, but I didn't get a chance to get another battle, or I didn't get into one. Have you seen if those damage totals to the forts are added to your in-game damage counter?
They are not, as far as I know. We played the last time we played it. A person in my division asked, "Are you getting any damage?" Because they were shooting the fort with the Yamato, and the damage counter was not going up. So as far as I know, you don't get to farm the damage off of the forts and surveillance stations.
Well, that makes me feel a little better because that could have really skewed some stats, particularly with how many hit points that those things have.
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, they have 300,000 HP?
Yeah, I think so.
And you do full damage, so if you were to just sit there and just shoot the forts the whole game, I guess you'd come out with 1 million damage game or whatever.
Yeah. Well, at least Wargaming saw that one coming and didn't have that happen. So the next thing on our list was the competitive battle mode beta. And I suppose that what I think of when I talk about that is the tactics of sitting in smoke and firing from smoke. And it seems to be really pervasive both in the team battles, in the Supremacy League, and in the ranked season this year. I think we both agree that it's not conducive to good gameplay, but do you have any thoughts on how that might be fixable?
I don't know if it is fixable. I think it's a tactic that's being used that I feel. I mean, in real life, destroyers would lay down smoke screens for big ships, not necessarily for them to sit still, but to cover them. I feel in team battles, ranked, Supremacy League, whatever the competitive meta is at the time, I feel like smoking your battleships or even your cruisers. I mean, a lot of times you smoke your cruisers and your battleships, depending on how close they are. I feel like it's a tactic. It is a boring tactic, I think, to watch, but I think it's the correct tactic for this game because battleships alone in a competitive match get shredded.
Agreed.
Not just by torpedoes, but by fire, by AP, by everything. And I feel like if you have good DD play, you should win the game. I mean, it's like in the games that were casted, the Supremacy games that were casted by Mijash, you can see the teams that had the better DD play, whether it be smoke screens, torp walls, whatever it may be, tended to win that game just because the DD has such a big impact on the game. Do I feel like, I don't know, some people complain that if you're in the smoke screen, you shouldn't be able to see out of the smoke screen. I don't know. I think some ships, later warships, had radar. So they would be able to see out of the smoke screen either way.
Agreed.
But yes, do I feel like smoke tactics, as I would call them, are a little boring to some people? Yes.
So, kind of related to that, I think I said we certainly talked about before that that ranked games largely came down to what your DD play was like. And that was why a lot of people started playing DDs, and why you see a lot of times you see like 6 or even 7 destroyers on each side when you're playing in the ranked matches. I would never found that to be compelling gameplay either, because if you don't have a balanced kind of between the different classes, what's the point of having anything but a destroyer?
I agree. The biggest thing that I noticed about ranked season this season was because of the change in tier. Everybody was playing destroyer now, and it had to do with the change of keeping your star. I feel like DD play in ranked. I mean, if you got the good DD, and maybe you know one of the DDs, you can work with that DD. I feel like this season, of all the seasons, and this is honestly the toughest season that everybody said. This is the first season I personally ranked out. I know there's been people that have ranked out every season, but this was the first season I did, and I picked, according to everybody else, the worst season to do it. But I feel like the ships lent it to play for DD. I mean, when you think about it, the Nagato and the Colorado, they pretty much can pin each other almost at any angle and do good damage. I mean, there was plenty of times where a Nagato's bow on and I saw a Colorado do 30k to him. Same thing the other way.
Yeah, I agree.
But the DD is allowed, if you play DD, which I know a lot of the people that ranked out actually played DD, because I feel like you got to control the game more. Not only did you get to support your team more, but you got more experience. So if your team lost, then more times than not, you would get lucky and keep your star, I guess.
I agree that was a big factor, and I think that one of the things is just that you're right. There wasn't a clear choice. I mean, the Miyoko is a good cruiser, but it didn't really fit well into the competitive mode of ranked, in my opinion. I felt like the Miyoko was not a cruiser that was worth its slot, and even the battleships, like you say, they would often get penned by each other no matter what angle. It was very frustrating, and I love to play battleships. So, in last season, I ranked out in the Amagi, because in the Amagi, I knew how to play it such that I couldn't be hurt if I was angled properly. Sure, you're going to get penned if you show your broadside in a turnout or something like that, but there were ways to prevent damage that in incoming that I just didn't feel was possible in either the Nagato or the Colorado. I got frustrated and ended up not ranking out. I only got to rank 3, but I think that I would have been able to and you're right, with the change to the way the stars work, I think that if it had been rank 8 again, I probably would have been able to get through it in a way that I wasn't with it being rank 7, or with it being tier 7.
Yeah, tier 7 changed a lot. When you think about it, the cruisers at tier 7, I mean, you have the Miyoko, the Atlanta, the York, and the Pensacola, and the Indianapolis.
And the Shores.
And the Shores. Of all of those, the Miyoko, I believe, was played the most.
Probably followed by the Shores.
Probably followed by the Shores and the Atlanta. I mean, I saw one Pensacola, he got insta-deleted the minute he was spotted.
Yeah.
I saw a couple Indianapolis. One played well, the other one's not.
I saw more Indianapolises and Pensacola's in the rank 15 to rank 6 area than I did. Once you got to rank 5, people were pretty hard on anybody what brought a ship that was really just losing a slot.
Yeah, and that's another thing. In ranked, there's only 7 people on your team, including yourself. So every ship that's in that game matters. If you have an AFK, if you have someone go off and do their own thing, you're probably going to lose.
And I think that led to some pretty toxic attitudes in both in chat and in the game because people would get so upset about losing that they would. I saw a lot of different people go off. I lost my temper a few times. I feel like that was a difficult way to play, if that makes sense.
I feel ranked brings the worst out of any player. You have this. Some people have the mindset they just want to play for fun. Well, if you just want to play for fun, please don't play ranked. People that are playing ranked want to win. They don't want to just sail around the map. And I feel like some people took it a little far. I mean, I've heard of plenty of people getting chat banned from just yelling and screaming, in ranked. I feel like toxicity in ranked was stressful, I feel, for this game. Ranked wasn't what they call fun. Ranked caused a lot of anxiety for people. I mean,
I heard a lot of people that said, hey, I'm going to take a break after ranked because I got so fed up with stuff, but I wanted to finish the ranked thing out. Yeah.
I mean, there's people that have played 1,500 games this season in ranked and not ranked out. I mean, that is a ludicrous amount of games to play and not reach the goal you're aiming for.
Yeah, I played about 300 and didn't rank out, and it was very, very frustrating.
The main thing for me for ranked is I tell everybody this that asks me, how'd you rank out? I tell them, honestly, it's 85% luck, 15% skill. And the reason why I say that is you got to get lucky and get good teammates.
I agree.
Ranked, you cannot carry every game like a random game if you have to. You can't. It's not possible. You have to get lucky and get some competent teammates. And the day that I ranked out, I got 12 stars. I went from 3 to 1, and it only took me 18 games.
That's insanely lucky. Insanely lucky.
Correct. And that, I played the Bliss the whole time, that whole day, and it took me 18 games. Now, the day before, it took me 18 games to get 1 rank. So that's, a huge difference in luck. It's luck. I've like a couple people like in OP ranked out really quick, but they got really good teams. Some people in OP, it took forever to rank out. Some didn't rank out, like yourself, because one, battleships. It didn't matter how much damage you did in battleships.
You never kept your star.
You never got to keep your star, and I think that is one thing that has to be changed. Either they have to get rid of the keeping the star thing, or they have to change how XP is distributed. Because a DD hopping on the cap, getting a cap, and then doing a little bit of damage gets to keep their star when the battleship does 130,000 damage, gets a couple kills, and just because they didn't get a cap, they lose their star. Which one had more impact on the game?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It was, and I got to the point where I felt like I was doing absolutely everything that I could in whatever ship I was playing, whether it be a DD or a battleship, but I would still lose. And I'd play a game and I didn't make a mistake, and I'd still lose. And it's at that point where you're just like, why am I doing this? What is the point of me doing this anymore?
Yeah, I agree. When I hit 5, I took a little bit of a break from ranked. I mean, it wasn't a struggle. It only took me to get from ranked 15 to 5. It only took me 70 games. But when I got to 5, I waited a few days to get going. Waiting for, because when I got there weren't a lot of people at 5. When I got there and I started playing 5, oh man, it turned into just a
slog.
Just a struggle. You would gain a star, lose a star. Gain a star, lose a star. Get lucky, keep your star, gain a star. It became kind of felt like a job in the sense of trying to rank out.
Yeah.
And I know it caused a lot of hurt feelings between, friends, clan members, however you want to describe.
Oh, I agree. I like that it's hard. I like that ranked wasn't just a pushover. At the same time, it would be nice if it was just a little easier, just a little bit easier, that in maybe some way that it made it slightly less frustrating, if that makes sense.
I think, I like the challenge of ranked, but I also like, to feel like you're moving towards your goal. And gaining a star, and then losing a star, and gaining a star, and losing a star, doesn't feel like you're going anywhere. And I feel like I noticed when I was doing it that there would only be in the 5 bracket a couple games because there's only a certain amount of people in that bracket. But I feel like if you're wanting to keep the brackets at a hard lock in the sense of people, maybe you need to change the numbers a little bit.
You talking about maybe making it like ranked 1 to 10 type of thing?
Well, maybe not that far because then you're expanding the player pool really far, but maybe like 2 to 6 or something like add one more ranked level to each group so that you can bring in a few more people.
Well, one of the things I had a problem with is that because the pool was so small, is that the teams felt very, very stagnant. You would end up playing with the same 14 people like 4 games in a row, and with minor shuffling between the teams, and it never felt like it always felt you were playing the same battle again. And you knew who was good, you knew who was bad, you knew that at the start of the match, if one team got a bunch of the people that were quote unquote bad, that they were probably going to lose.
I agree. The more you played ranked, the more you recognized names, the more you found out who plays for the team, who doesn't play for the team. And I feel like that itself led to people thinking, hey, I'm just going to throw my ship away because we're not going to win this game because of so-and-so, instead of actually trying. There were plenty of times where I remember I got on a team with, some players that people deemed were not very good ranked, and we would crush the team that had the quote-unquote good players. But I feel like it harbors animosity, I guess, in ranked.
I agree. Well, I think we've beaten a dead horse for quite a while. So let's do the last topic that I had on my list for current events. What's your favorite premium ship?
My favorite premium ship is right now, or of any of them that have been released?
Of any of them that have been released.
I would honestly say, even though it was just released, the Arizona is probably my favorite premium ship.
I was going to say that too. Like, you took it away from me. Let me hear your reasons first, and then I'll give you mine.
I feel that the Arizona is balanced between doing damage, receiving damage. Yes, it's a little slow, but it's gorgeous. And I feel like it is a great balanced ship. And I know there was some drama about the Sigma value. I'm not even going to get into that. But I feel the Arizona is a balanced ship, and that it's everything a premium should be. It has some stats that are worse than the New Mexico, some stats that are better than the New Mexico. And I feel like it's in a great spot where it is. What do you like about the Arizona?
I like that it is, with the possible exception of the Warspite, the most accurate of the Tier 6 battleships. And I think that rewards players who know how to land their shots and know where to put their shots. And so I find the Arizona to be very, very rewarding because I get to play at a tier where there's a lot of people, and you get to play with as we talked about before, Tier 6 is a really fun tier to play at. But I get to play a ship that has more like a Tier 8 level or Tier 9 level accuracy. And if I can do that, I feel like it's a really... You can make a huge difference, and you can carry your team in a way that we were talking about that you couldn't in rank.
I agree. And I feel when I get tiered up in the Arizona, I feel like I'm in a good spot. I don't fear an Amagi in Arizona. I mean, I fired a full salvo on an Amagi at 17.5 kilometers, did 36,000 damage to him. 36,000 damage in a tier 6 and a tier 8 game on trap.
That's crazy.
I also did over 50,000 damage that game with HE on a North Carolina that never moved. You know, and I was bouncing North Carolina and Amagi shells with the Arizona. I feel
that's totally possible.
Yes.
You just can't take it straight through the bow, so you have to maintain your angle.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. You know, everybody's like, well, the Arizona is just like the New Mexico. I go, no, the Arizona is actually a Pennsylvania class. There are subtle differences. And I feel that the Arizona bounces a lot more shells than the New Mexico does.
I agree. It doesn't take those penetrating non-Citadel hits in the way that I feel like the New Mexico does, and the Fuso, for that matter, does quite a bit.
Now, I will say, the one weakness that I do find of the Arizona is its AA.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime anytime you're in the Arizona and you're top tier and there's no carriers, I'm like, yeah, baby.
I have to say, I played a game the other day in the Arizona against a Lexington, and when the Lexington planes came close, I'm just going to close my eyes because, I mean, if he wants to get rid of me, he can. Luckily, he didn't. He found the North Carolina more inviting, I guess. But
I think I was with you in that game.
Yes, you were, and I just feel that is the one thing. But I mean, you can't have everything good about the ship. There's got to be some type of drawback, and to me, the AA on the Arizona is definitely I mean, it's worse than the Fuso AA. I mean, it's
yeah, that's bad.
It's pretty bad AA, and other than that, I mean, long range shots with the Arizona sometimes will troll you just because of the dispersion. But other than that, I mean, it's a very good premium. And if you haven't bought it and you like battleships, I think was today the last day?
I can't know. I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, Monday. But this post should be posted on Monday. I'm not sure if it'll still be out when people listen to this. But yeah, if it is, and you like battleships, I completely agree with Kami on this. Go buy it. It is an extremely fun ship to play.
Yes, you will. If you want a good credit earner and a fun ship to play and you love battleships, I support the Arizona. Not 100%. Not just because of what the historical sense
which is a really good reason to buy it, too.
Correct. I agree. But it's just a great ship. It's in a great place. Wargaming did a great job of balancing the Arizona. There are some premiums in this game that I feel are unbalanced.
I agree, and I think that it's good without being overpowered, and thus it's fun to play.
I agree 100%.
Alrighty, well, let's just move on a little bit here and talk. Have a little bit of our tactics type of discussion. I mean, maybe give out a few suggestions on what newer or even experienced players might want to try out. So I think the first thing on my list here is map awareness and mini-map modifications. What do you run as far as mini-map modifications are concerned, and how do you use your mini-map, Kami?
For my mini-map, I'm using a mod out of Aslan's. It's semi-transparent, I think is what they call it, and it shows last known position with names. The way I use my mini-map is I look at it, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to use, let's see, what would be a good map that displays map awareness? I'm going to use North, because North, you always have an issue on North.
Yes.
North domination mode is the one mode, ever since the closed beta, has always had an issue. There's
you have caps to redeploy.
Yes. There's 4 caps. A, B, C, and D. A is in the open. D is, I call D like no man's land.
I've seen some people say D is for don't go there.
Correct. Exactly. And especially don't go there if you're in a 21 knot battleship.
Yeah, I've seen the guys over there in like New Mexico's and Texas's and things, and it's like, where are you gonna go once you're there?
There's 2 giant mountains. You're never, if you go, say you spawn towards the middle and you're in a Colorado. Let's use Colorado because, Colorado's about the same speed as the rest of them. And you go towards D. It's going to take you 5 minutes to get to D.
And then another 5 minutes to get somewhere else that you can shoot something.
It's going to take you another 5 minutes to get south of D or go back around the way you came. In the meantime, if they didn't send anybody to D, you're not even shooting anything. So if you're top tier and you're in a Colorado and you're at D and your guns are out of the fight, that means somewhere else their guns are in the fight. So you've completely neutralized an advantage that your team has.
And you might as well not even be in the game. You took your guns out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sailing around for 10 minutes trying to figure out where you're going, you're not helping your team.
So the minimap mod that you're talking about is one that I actually use as well. There's one other aspect of it that I really, really like and I use constantly, particularly when I'm shooting at longer ranges. But the minimap mod puts a line out of the front of the ship on the minimap. And so you can tell when that line starts to move very far away from the ship. So it'll like go all the way across the map to show the direction that ship is going. And then you can tell when that starts to move, the ship's starting to turn. So it's much easier to tell when the ship is turning and when it's not, because that line extends so far across the minimap. The other thing that I learned that I wanted to pass on is that you can turn on or off the ship names by hitting the Alt key once. And it'll toggle between having the ship names on your minimap and not having them. So if you ever get in there and you're like, why aren't the ship names on there? Hit Alt, and you'll see the ship names on your minimap.
Oh, that's a nice feature. I personally didn't even know that.
It was something I learned on accident the other day, so yeah.
Map awareness is, in this game, in a battleship, the most important thing. To me.
I would think that, as I started to be a much more predominant cruiser captain, and I think it's even more important for a cruiser because cruisers are the ships in this game, in my mind, that are the most ideally suited to redeploy when they're needed. When you need to counter an enemy threat, your cruisers have to be the ones that are watching the minimap, being aware of not only, hey, I'm the only person over here. I'm not going to go and face the 3 enemy battleships that are coming around the A side. I need to retreat. Or, hey, there's a lone cruiser that's making a run for our cap on the other side of the map. I'm fast enough that I can turn around and kill him. So, just as it is important for battleships, it's really important for cruisers too.
I agree. And the reason why I say battleships, it's most important for, because the minute you choose where you're going in a battleship, especially a slow battleship, that's where you're going to be for most of the game. It's not like you can take your Colorado from one side of the map to the other without costing a lot of time. And you may not be shooting at anything. And I feel battleships aren't all about the damage they do. It's about the damage, about their potential damage and their presence.
Not only that, but they're a kind of a hit point sponge too. Like they're a way that you can soak up fire from the enemy team without losing the guns on your side.
Yeah, and I feel like some people think that battleships are just tanks.
They're not.
This game, yes, they do have more hit points, but the prime example is the Yamato. The Yamato has 97,000 hit points. But if it gets concentrated on, they go away really fast.
Especially if you have 5 fires on you and you can't put them out.
Yes, battleships have more HP, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're tanks. And I feel people think that people get mad at battleships that don't just charge the caps.
Which is a really stupid thing for a battleship to do, because as soon as it gets on the cap, it's just going to keep getting reset because it's so easy to hit.
Yeah, and that is correct. I feel like some people don't understand what each class is for. I feel like some people come from maybe the MOBA world or, something like that, where they think that the person or the ship with the most HP is the tank. Well, no. A battleship. If you get a battleship on a cap, something's gone wrong. Either that person is YOLOing, or maybe it's the end of the game and their team is getting stomped on, which is a different situation. But there should never be a battleship on the cap at the start of the game, ever. And if you are a battleship that's doing that, you're probably going to get concentrated on. I mean, you're going to get focused, and then you're probably going to die. I mean, because you're going to run into a DD or something like that. But map awareness, when it comes to any type of ship, and even destroyers, even aircraft carriers, is important. And if you don't have it, please try and learn it. Watch streams, watch YouTube.
Make your mini-map bigger.
Make your mini-map bigger. Yeah, maybe that's the problem. Maybe you have your mini-map strinked all the way to the smallest setting. You don't pay any attention to it because you can't see it.
Yeah, hit the plus key and just make it as... I make mine as big as I can make it. It takes up an entire corner of my screen.
Reading the mini-map is just as important as playing the game.
Oh, absolutely. And, make sure that you're looking at it between your shots, too, because if you get so focused down on a guy, and even I do this, if I'm trying to chase a guy down, I'm trying to kill him, and I don't take a minute to look at the mini-map between my shots, I'll end up in a spot where I don't want to be, and I'm going to die.
Yeah. And a good example of this tends to happen on, Two Brothers?
Yeah.
With the 4-cap domination mode. I mean, it turns into a giant wheel.
Yeah, everybody kind of goes around and chasing each other, and it's a mess.
And sometimes you got to figure out, when is the time to turn around and fight these guys? Or are we just going to play Ring Around Rosie the whole game?
And I've seen games like that, where barely anybody dies, and then people are like, oh, in the middle of the game, I'm going to rush back up the center channel. That's always a bad idea. Never, please, never do that.
Never go center channel on Two Brothers.
Yeah, if you learned one thing from the Warships podcast today, that's what you should learn.
and this comes from experience. I did it in a Yamato.
Oh, good Lord. When did you do that?
Probably a couple months ago. I took a Yamato up the middle. I mean,
just for the lulls?
Yeah, just see what would happen. And I sat in there against and the aircraft carrier couldn't really hit me.
That's pretty ridiculous. Yeah, I was actually saw a Pensacola coming up the center, and I was in my Pensacola, and I saw him coming because he was spotted by aircraft, and I wasn't spotted on the other side. And I just sat there and waited, and as soon as he came around, it was just Citadel, and wipe one Pensacola away.
And I say never go up the channel, but there are times, if you're reading the map and you're reading the game situation, that going up the middle may be a benefit. Done it a few times.
I've sometimes late in the game when you're trying to get a cap or something, it can be beneficial. But if you know that there's going to be people on the other side of that channel, or if it's within the first 5-10 minutes of the game, it's suicide.
Yeah, and you'll see these people at the very beginning of the game. I'm going in the middle. Okay.
And you're like, okay, well, that's one ship we don't have.
Well, we're down to Cleveland or whatever the ship was, and it's like that right there goes back to map awareness. Why would you go down the middle at the beginning of the game? Because the other team's probably going to do that too.
Yeah.
They're going to send somebody. Or they're going to wait right outside the channel for you to come out of the channel.
Yeah. Oh, anytime I'm in a ship that has torpedoes in a decent location like an Otago, a lot of times I'll just kind of cruise around there towards it, toss my torpedoes down, and then go somewhere else for the rest of the game, just in case I get a hit. I've gotten hits that way before.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen... The funny thing is, I've seen 3-4 ships from each team try to get into that channel. And it's like... there's one... Why? And two, there's not enough room for all you guys to get in there without hitting each other, and they're torping, and it's like, you realize and then you just see a bunch of carcasses. Wrecked ships just in the middle. And it's like, oh, well, at least they had fun.
It'd be kind of funny because if that was considered like a shallow channel and the wrecks just stayed there and blocked it. Maybe future idea for Wargaming like that. Okay, so one last topic before we have our guest on. Ammo usage, and how do you tell when somebody else is shooting AP or HE at you, and how important is that information?
I use a tracer mod that shows AP as blue and HE as kind of an orangish red color.
I use the same one.
But I believe it's very important to know what's being shot at you. In the game originally, the colors were very close to being the same. So it was really
but you could distinguish between them. I learned very early on that you could. I just use the mod because it makes it very apparent at a glance what's being shot, and I don't have to spend time thinking, which one is that?
Correct. And I believe everyone should use a tracer mod. And I think they did change the colors in the game.
Yeah, they did make them more apparent, but I still use the tracer one because it's like neon bright, and I can tell instantly what's being fired.
I use the same exact one because I want to know when those shells are in the air. Like, because you can notice them at a distance what they are. You know, it's very important because whether it's timing a turn or, you know, what this person's actually shooting at you. And I know with my division that I play with, a lot of times we call out what that person is shooting based on what color the shells are.
Oh, absolutely. Because it's important to know. If you see a battleship that's spewing out HE, well, A, you point and laugh at him, but B, that guy's not as much of a threat as the guy next to him that's hurling AP salvos at people's broadsides.
Yeah. Knowing ammo types and knowing what each ammo type is good for, what they're strong and what they're weak at, it is important to this game. I can't tell you how many times I've seen battleships and you're like, oh man, I am in a bad position. I'm going broadside. I wasn't paying attention. You go broadside and you turn and HE hits you from another battleship. And you're like, man, if that dude would have had AP loaded, I'm wrecked.
Yeah, exactly. Or conversely, I mean, we were playing the other day, and I was in my Arizona, and there was a Fuso that was completely pointing his nose at me. Like there was no broadside whatsoever, and we were hurling AP, but we were at like 14, 15 kilometers. He was on the other side of the map, and we weren't getting any penetrating hits. I finally decided, heck with it. I'm just going to launch some HE at him because I'm going to guarantee my damage. He only had 10,000 hit points. 3-4 salvos later, he was dead because I chose the ammo type that I could actually use. If he at no point did he show any interest in firing anything other than his front two guns, and even if he was firing his like third gun, I would have had enough angle to shoot AP at him, but he just didn't. So it's times like that I find it's important that you realize that, hey, sometimes you don't shoot AP while you're in a battleship. Sometimes you need to actually make the contradictory choice.
I agree 100%. I'll give you a good example. I was playing in Arizona. We were on Neighbors, and the enemy team had an Arizona that consistently just didn't want to fight. He would turn away. He was the last ship alive, I believe, too, or one of the last ships alive. And I was chasing him in Arizona. So, man, it's like, two fat kids chasing cake. But he would only shoot AP at me, even though I was bow onto him. I probably bounced 50 shells from that guy. But I made the conscious choice to switch to HE because I knew if I can get a sticky fire and annoy him, maybe he'll turn around and fight me. Instead, he just kept running, so I just kept shooting HE at him, and pretty soon I did his whole HP pool in HE with fires and HE because I was doing consistent damage.
And he wasn't doing anything.
And he wasn't doing anything. He was bouncing me the whole time. There are times in battleships where you will shoot HE. And I say it on stream. I am switching to HE, and I'm going to burn this battleship down. Because maybe you're in an Iowa, and it's a bow on Yamato.
Yeah, there's no point in firing AP at a bow on Yamato.
Maybe you're in a North Carolina, and you're chasing something that's running away. There are times where HE in battleships is viable. but it's not all the time, and it's not when ships are going broadside to you. You got to learn what the difference is.
Well, another thing that I've noticed is that since the 058 patch, I've taken to shooting AP at destroyers and getting good damage off of it. Yes, you can theoretically roll perfectly and use HE damage to just blow up a DD, but at the same time, I've gotten HE shots on destroyers with my battleship that roll 0, and all I do is module damage. Whereas if I hit it with AP, I at least get the overpen, which is the 10%. So I've taken to shooting AP at destroyers. How about you?
I have always shot AP at destroyers. My feeling is you're going to do damage. If you hit them, you're doing guaranteed damage with AP. Where, like you said, with HE, you could blow up a torpedo tube, or disable
hit a saturated part of the hit ship.
Correct, and do no damage. Where with AP, if you hit them, you're doing damage. Very rarely do you ever bounce a battleship shell off of a DD. I have seen it done, but
it does happen.
Rarely. And if you get a penetrating hit on that DD, you've just halved them, or hit them for a third, or whatever DD it is. You've done good damage, And more times than not, like I play with a player named Slap. He's gotten very good at killing DDs. I mean, I've seen him take 15K out of a Fletcher at 10 kilometers with AP from a battleship. And that is RNG dependent, of course. But I would recommend always shooting AP. I know HE is what everybody says to shoot, but HE has a chance of not doing any damage. AP, at least if you hit them, you're going to do at least an overpin. Which, I know it's just an overpin, but an overpin is guaranteed damage, where you could have hit him with that same shell, it being HE, and it doesn't do anything. So
yeah. Well, and you're also then not having to worry about switching between shell types at a bad time.
Correct. And with battleships, it's even more key, because think about it. I mean, some battleships have a 34-second reload time. 34 seconds. The game's only 20 minutes long. So how many total salvos do you get to fire in a game?
Yeah, exactly.
Got to make everyone count.
What about for cruiser side? What's your decision tree like when you're in a cruiser, and when you're shooting HE, when you shoot AP?
Again, it depends on the target, depends on the ship. If you're in, what's a good example that a lot of people would have?
Otago?
There you go, the Otago. That's a perfect example. A lot of times you're just going to be shooting HE at Otago. Because one,
it's really good HE.
Correct. It is the IJN flavor, the HE damage. You're going to light a lot of fires. But if a cruiser goes broadside to you, don't be afraid to shoot AP at them. But the biggest thing is you have to anticipate them going broadside. Because if you just switch to AP and then they never do, you're just going to hold your shells forever? Yeah. I mean, there's got to be a little bit of anticipation. It's got to be a little bit of, foresight into seeing what you think's going to happen. But typically with that ship, you shoot a lot of HE, because fires are what get you your damage. Fires are what's going to get rid of a lot of players with that ship, because the fire chance is so high.
Right, but at the same time, I've had a lot of Otago and Zao games where I've got tons and tons of fire damage, but it took me 100, 150 hits to get that damage, and then you go to the screen at the end, and you see, you did 50,000 damage in fires and HE on 150 hits, and then you have 20 AP hits that also did 50,000 damage worth. And you can, and it's at that point you're like, hey, switching over to AP is worth it. Even if you only do it once in a while.
Yes, and there are plenty. If you have prior knowledge of where say a cruiser is coming around the corner, you should definitely be shooting AP at that guy. Because I mean, with the Zao, I've seen you can hit 20K salvos with the Zao easy.
Oh, easily,
yeah. And I will say this: it depends a lot on the tier, what you're going to do. I mean, I've seen good Clevelands. I've seen bad Clevelands. I've seen good, a good Cleveland player at top tier is going to be a pain
in
the ass. when they know what to shoot at you. Nurembergs that shoot AP at mid-tier battleships. There's a hint right there, guys. AP broadside battleships. And I'm a battleship player, and I'm telling you this. So, it's true. It'll work. I mean, you'll do 3-4K.
Oh, yeah.
New Mexico's, Colorado's.
Well, that's true of a lot of the German cruisers. They're AP boats, and it's for me when I'm in my German cruisers, the Hindenburg or the Rune or the Hipper. It's a matter of when do I switch to HE. It's kind of the reverse scenario of the IGN ships.
Correct, and that's what I like about this game. Each nation kind of has their own flavor. It has their own kind of what this nation's good at. Japanese ships, great at HE damage. And torpedoes. American ships, kind of the jack of all trades, kind of blah, when it comes to cruiser.
Well, they're anti-aircraft cruisers is what they are.
Yeah, they are. But the problem...
Even their battleships are anti-aircraft based.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that's great. I love not being... Like, in my Des Moines, I love just sitting there and watching planes fly over and die. It's awesome. But the problem with it is you don't see a lot of carriers anymore. That's a topic for a whole different day.
Yeah, let's save that for another day. And I think it's time that we bring on our guest, Doc Citadel.
Welcome, Doc.
Today we have with us Dr. Citadel, who is the founder of OverPowered Gaming, to answer a few questions about the OverPowered Gaming clan and its goals. Doc, do you want to say hello and give a little bit about yourself?
Oh, hey everybody. Name's, currently going by Air Dr. Citadel, sort of a throwback to my German roots, but everybody just calls me Doc. I've been playing probably since open beta, whatever that was. Don't know specifically the release date on that, but I've been playing since that time. Have, several thousand games. Love the game. Like the direction it's going. And definitely looking forward to some more team-based features.
I think we all are. It's the team features that they have come out with so far. Have they held your interest in it, or are they more of something that you're looking for additional things in the future?
I definitely like what they've had come out so far, specifically with team battles. Mainly because you can, form your own team. You don't have to have a random element to your team. You can sort of control that. And I think that's really essential to having a competitive format. In addition to that, Supremacy League has been very interesting as well. Since it's hosted by a third party, it's hosted by APOC. So a shout out to them for that. So that's the only real competitive outlets we have currently is a third party outlet and team battles if they're put back in.
So you represent the leadership of OverPowered Gaming. What made you start OverPowered Gaming, and what are your kind of goals for it?
This might take a few minutes. To fully answer that question, I'll have to give a bit of history about the early beginnings of it, I guess you could say. So basically, like I said, I've been playing since closed beta. To be perfectly honest, I was not that great a player in closed beta. So I wasn't really taking the game seriously. It was sort of a side game at the time. I was playing another game at the time. After open beta was released, I became a bit more serious, and much like tanks, I really wanted to become competitive, become the best possible player I could. So I started to slowly surround myself with people of equal skill, but definitely higher skill than myself. That way I could learn and improve myself. So one person I have to give a huge shout out to is E2 Blade. I'm not sure if you guys know him or not, but he is an excellent player.
I haven't met him, no.
And he has really helped me out a lot in the initial stages of learning how to play this game. After playing with him a few weeks, I sort of broke through that barrier and was able to look at my own faults and my own areas that needed improvement. Not too long after that, I ran into General Dort. at the time, and we probably played several hundred Yamato games together, and sort of built a bit of reputation doing that. But anyway, after doing that, he began a Twitch stream, and I was continually gathering people around me, and he started up a TeamSpeak for his Twitch. So, all the people that I knew, I kind of brought them over there, and all the people he knew brought them over there. And after a couple of months, it really started to come to the surface, I guess, the need that I saw. And essentially that need was that exactly what I said a few minutes ago, with me learning to become a better player by being around better players, the idea struck me that we needed a highly competitive clan where we could gather people together that were extremely good at the game and then inject other people in that maybe weren't as proficient. And the idea being that everybody stands to improve. And the more people that you surround yourself with that are excellent in a certain area, the more you stand to learn from them. And sort of that was where the idea for OverPowered Gaming was born. And at that point, many of the people that I had gathered around me became in leadership positions. We started to recruit slowly at first, and it started to sort of take a life of its own. And here we are today. We have well over 100 members in 4 different clans, and it's continually growing.
And what do you see the kind of end goals of OverPowered Gaming? The OverPowered Gaming community, I guess, is the way we should really put it.
Definitely our final goal is to we're all waiting on Clan Wars, and whenever that gets here, we have we hope to have 3 Clan Wars ready clans ready to go at that time. We have a social clan in addition, but our main focus is going to be on those 3 clans. Not only pulling talent together, but intense training, so that when the time comes, we'll be ready for it. So that's the ultimate goal, and again, having people on that continual curve of improvement.
So, what kind of activities does the OverPowered Gaming community have, and what do you feel is the way that somebody could come into that community and make contact with overpowered people?
Some of the activities we currently have, we have a bi-weekly scrimmage. We're going to be increasing that to 3 times a week in the near future. And what that is, we have anybody who wants to participate gathers for 2 to 3 hours a night on the designated nights. And we pick several maps and we just practice. And we practice with different strategies, different ship compositions. And basically, we have a after briefing report to improve upon, what we did. So that's one thing. We also have several teams and team battles. So whenever that comes back around, we'll be ready for that. The last season of team battles, I think we had, I can't recall correctly, but it was 3, possibly 4 teams. Number 1, 2, 3, and possibly 4 in team battles. So we were very successful in that. We also participate in just about any tournament that comes along. So we definitely have a cornucopia of activities to participate in.
And if someone is out there thinking about joining or looking for a community like OverPowered Gaming, how would they go about contacting you or somebody else that would be in a position to help them join?
So currently we don't have a recruiting post up on the forums. We'll be rectifying that soon. But currently the best way to contact us is simply to hop on our TeamSpeak. We have a recruitment center at the top of our TeamSpeak, so it's very visible. If you hop in that channel, it has our entrance requirements as well as several forms that you can fill out to apply. And of course, once you fill out that application, then you'll simply contact a recruiter and you'll be on your way.
And we'll go ahead and post that information with the podcast episode so that people can take a look at that, and including the TeamSpeak information. So a minute ago, you talked about really caring about stats, and I played World of Tanks a long time ago, and for a long time, it was really all that people cared about was win rating in World of Tanks, and then people kind of slowly started to realize there were ways to kind of gimmick that, and so you saw the birth of some of the World of Tanks ratings. There are starting to be some ratings, the Warships Today rating being probably the one that's most used, I would say, in the World of Warships community. What do you feel about those statistics? And do you feel like those statistics tell a better story than just pure win rating? Or, I guess, what is you're talking about quality of players, but you have to have some kind of metric. So what kind of metrics do you feel are valuable and what maybe are not so valuable?
Interesting you should say that. I fully agree. Win rate can and is manipulated. Now that being said, if a player is to play strictly solo and is an excellent player, sure, you'll have an above average win rate. But when you take players of that same caliber, put 2, even 3 in a division, it's going to be massively inflated. Now, is that because the player doesn't deserve that, number? I don't think so. I mean, if you play, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. But again, that doesn't tell anywhere near the full story. And that's why in our recruiting standards, we take a full picture of a applicant's requirements. Not only do we take, overall win rate, we take solo win rate, we take recent, we look at the WTR rating, but also we look at, minimum ship tiers played. And I don't have the document open in front of me, but, there are multiple qualifications for OP 1, 2, and 3 that are above and beyond win rate. We probably have, I would say, probably several dozen hours tied up in just analyzing profiles and trying to build a good rating system to judge an applicant's skill level. There's no one statistic you can look at and say, this guy's an awesome player, because just about everything can be manipulated. Especially playing, low tier ships. I mean, if you play several hundred games in an Umakazi, for example, and do excellent, you're going to have a massively inflated WTR for that ship. So you really have to take a whole picture to get the full story here, and that's what we try to do. Again, if you look at our entrance requirements document, that is available publicly, then you'll see what we made. I think we have a pretty good picture based on the information that we currently have publicly to make a good judgment.
And if somebody's maybe not quite in the realm of that kind of player type, what kind of is OverPowered Gaming community a place that that kind of person can come to learn, even if they may not qualify to be a part of the clan?
Yeah, certainly. We have probably, I'd hate to imagine how many different friends come in here. We have, to elaborate on that, I specifically mean friend tags. So on our TeamSpeak server, we have member tags for all the members, and all the friends have friend tags. And we have a very large public area at the top of our TeamSpeak, and we have plenty of room here, so anybody that wants to come in and hang out is welcome. And that really fits in with our philosophy. If you want to learn from the best, this is the place to be. So not only are members welcome here, but anyone that wants to pop in and catch the vision or just to talk and ask advice is welcome.
Excellent. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add about, or not even, maybe not about OverPowered Gaming? Is there anything that you wanted to add about warships in general?
I would just like to say, I think development of ships is a bit more intensive than tanks. And I think, making these numerous different ship models takes an immensely larger amount of time than it did in tanks. So I think the content's coming, and I think everybody just needs to be patient and wait. So I think we're excited about everything that is coming, and we know it is coming. So OverPowered Gaming is going to be ready when it gets here.
So one final question. What do you see as the biggest challenge coming to the competitive play meta, I guess is the way to phrase it, for the World of Warships game?
The biggest challenge? It's really hard to really dial that in without having experienced it yet. But I would say probably the biggest challenge will be getting to know all the other clans. Currently, we don't have a clan tag system, so it's really hard to know if you're in public games. If you see excellent players on the field, you really don't know what clan they're affiliated with unless you just happen to hop in their TeamSpeak or Discord. So I think getting to know all the other clans and what their, the different alliances and different warring factions, if you will, I think that'll be the most interesting part.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Doc, and we'll see you in game.
And thanks for having me on, Kelorn, and good luck with your podcast. I think it's going to be going good places.
Both Kami and I are very much hoping that this will fill a need in the community.